My name's Tony Garrison. I've worked as a private investigator for almost 7 years now and started running my own business just a little over a year ago. Typically, I tend to get a lot of cases from paranoid spouses who think their significant other is cheating on them, or I'll be asked to gather incriminating evidence against the opposite parent in a bitter custody and divorce battle. So yeah, nothing too exciting. And for the most part, I'll take on any case, no matter how absurd it may sound at the time, because I'm in no position to turn down a paying customer. This will be my first missing person case I've worked on in a while. This morning, I received a call from a Mr. and Mrs. Fontaine. They said they would like to hire me to help locate their 25-year-old daughter, Stacey, who has mysteriously vanished. All they told me over the phone was that they filed a missing person report with the police a few weeks ago, but they haven't been much help. They have no leads, and there are no suspects in the case either. I'm on my way now to their home to meet them because I have an appointment with them to gather more information. I pull up in front of their house around noon, exit my silver Honda Civic, and make my way to the door. A tall man wearing glasses with graying hair, who appears to be in his 60s, answers it. Hello, how can I help you? Yes, hi, my name's Tony Garrison. We spoke this morning on the phone? Oh yes, please come in, he says, then steps aside and holds the door open for me to enter. I come inside, and then he closes the door behind me and introduces himself. I'm Mr. Fontaine, but you can call me Bob. I reach out and shake his hand, just as a woman with dirty blonde hair who looks to be in her 50s comes walking down the stairs. Hi, I'm Wendy. Thank you so much for coming. Then she leads the way into the living room, sits down on the sofa, and tells me to have a seat. I take a seat directly across from her, and then her husband sits down next to her. After we're all seated, I look at the both of them. Tell me everything you know. Start at the beginning. Mrs. Fontaine glances over at her husband as tears fill her eyes. He takes her hand and asks, Do you want me to start? She shakes her head no, and then after a moment she begins. We had just attended Stacey's graduation ceremony a few days prior, and then we had a huge party for her. All of our family and her friends came. She had such a great time. She pauses for a second, and a smile spreads across her face. She stayed with us for 2 days, and then she had to go back because of work. We spoke that day. She told me that she had plans with some of her friends later that night. They were going out to the bar to have a few drinks to celebrate her and Allison graduating. Do you know who she was going with? Yes, Allison, Marco, and Melinda. She texted me when she first got there. Then around midnight, she sent me one last text, but I didn't get it until the following morning because I was already asleep. What did the text say? It just said that she was tired, so she was going to head home, and that she loved me and she would talk to me tomorrow. But that was the last time I heard from her, she finishes, before bursting into tears. Mr. Fontaine places his hand on her back and gently rubs it, trying to console her, but to no avail. Once he realizes that his efforts aren't working, he continues. We were contacted the following afternoon by her friend Allison, and she asked if we had heard from Stacey. When we said that we hadn't, she told us that Stacey never showed up for work. So we tried to call her, but her phone just kept going straight to voicemail. My wife and I decided to drive out there, and that's when we found her apartment empty. From looking at the way she left things, we could tell that she never made it home from the bar the night before. So we immediately called the police and reported her missing. But as we already told you on the phone, they haven't been much help. They told us that since Stacey's an adult, that there isn't much they can do unless foul play is suspected, or they find a body. Then they had the nerve to suggest that she ran off with some guy. So that's why we decided to hire you. We heard you were the best in the business. Who have the police questioned so far? Mr. Fontaine shrugs. To be honest, I don't know. They won't tell us anything since the case is still ongoing. However, my wife and I did speak to Stacey's friends, and they all told us the same thing, that the last time they saw or talked to her was when they said goodbye to her right before she left the bar. As I sit there across from the Fontaines on the sofa, I watch intently for things like eye contact, the flicker of an eyelid, sweating, the tensing up of hands and face muscles, all things that would tell me that they were hiding something. But there's none of that. Once Mr. Fontaine finishes, I ask, "Is there anything else?" "No, I don't believe so." "All right then. Do you have a picture of Stacey?" "Yes, but what do you need it for?" "Well, a few different reasons. One of them being, I will need to show it to the bar owner and employees who were working that night." "Okay, right this way," he says, leading me over to the fireplace mantel. He removes a picture from a frame and hands it to me. It's of a young lady with the same dirty blonde hair as Mrs. Fontaine, and the same bright blue eyes as Mr. Fontaine, as well as most, if not all, of his facial features. "Will this be okay? It was taken about a month ago." "Yes, this is fine. Thank you. One more thing before I go. Does Stacey have any identifying marks, such as birthmarks, tattoos, or even moles?" "Yes, she has 2 tattoos. I know one of them is a flower and the other is a bird. I need a little more details than that. Can you describe them to me?" "Honey, can you please come over here and tell him about Stacey's tattoos?" Mrs. Fontaine gets up from the sofa and walks over. "Like Bob said, she has 2 of them. One of a purple and yellow flower on her left shoulder, and then the other is of a hummingbird on her right thigh. Oh, hold on a minute. I think I may have a picture of her where you can see the hummingbird." She leaves and returns with a photo of her and Stacey. In the picture, Stacey is wearing shorts, and I can clearly see the tattoo on her right thigh. "If you don't mind, can I hold on to this?" She nods her head and hands it to me. Then I thank them for their time and tell them that if they have any questions or think of anything else, anything at all, just to give me a call. "I'll let you know as soon as I find out anything," I say as I head out the door to my car. Since I took the case with not much to go on, I start my investigation by looking into Stacey's 3 friends that were with her at the bar that night. The male, named Marco Morales, age 24, is a senior at Georgetown University, majoring in law, and works as a busboy at a nearby restaurant. He's originally from Chicago. His father is an investment banker and his mother is a real estate agent. He's the middle child of 3 kids. He has an older brother who's married with a son and lives in New York, and a younger sister who is a junior in high school. I meet up with Marco at his dorm one afternoon. "So how do you know Stacey?" "I've known her for 2 years. We met at a party one night and have been friends ever since." "Do you know if she has a boyfriend?" "Not that I'm aware of. I think if she did, she would have definitely introduced us and brought him around to hang out. Our group of friends is pretty close." "Have the police questioned you?" "Yeah, but only once. They asked me when the last time I saw or talked to Stacey was, and just like I told her parents when they asked, I told them that she said goodbye to us before she left the bar that night, and that was the last time I saw her." "Do you think she ran off, or do you think something else may have happened to her?" "Something else like what?" "I don't know. I was just asking your opinion." After evaluating his behavior throughout our entire conversation and noticing that he doesn't seem the least bit bothered, I ask him one last question. "You don't seem very upset that your friend is missing. Why is that?" "Of course I'm upset. Just because I'm not in tears over it doesn't mean I'm unbothered by it. But I can't stop living my life just because she's gone." Upon following Marco for a few days after that, I don't uncover anything out of the ordinary or any suspicious behavior. He goes to school, then to work, and then back to his dorm for the night. For the most part, his routine stays pretty much the same, besides the one night that he goes out to the movies with some friends. So then I move on to the next friend that she was with that night. Allison Richards, age 26, who graduated the same time that Stacey did, majored in accounting, is originally from Washington, D.C., and is now back home living with her mother, who is a dental assistant, and her younger sister, who is 13 and suffers from cerebral palsy. She moved back home after graduating to help her mother take care of her sister until she can find a live-in nurse. Her father passed away from cancer 8 years ago. She and Stacey have known each other for years. They are both from Washington, D.C., and met their senior year of high school when Allison moved to town. They became so close that they even decided to apply to all of the same colleges, and when they both got into Georgetown, they were over the moon about it. Can you tell me what happened that night? Me, Stacey, Marco, and Melinda went out to the bar for a few drinks. We were celebrating me and Stacey graduating from college. I picked her up from her apartment, and we met Marco and Melinda there. We were there for only a few hours when Stacey said that she was tired and was ready to go home. The three of us wanted to stay a little longer, and she didn't want to spoil our fun, so she said that she would just walk. Her apartment was only about a block from the bar. We begged her to stay, just a little longer, but she declined. Then she paid her tab, said goodbye, and left. That's the last time I saw or spoke to her. After tailing Allison for only a few days, I already know not much is going to come of it. She goes to work every day, then right after heads home, and then her mom leaves for work and she takes care of her sister until her mother returns. So then I move on to Stacey's last friend, Melinda Robertson, age 23, originally from Birmingham, Alabama. She has a twin brother named Max, who also attends Georgetown. They are both sophomores, majoring in chemistry and economics. They were adopted and raised by their grandparents when they were only a year old, and have two other adoptive siblings, a brother who is also in college but goes to NYU, and a sister who lives in Miami and is a pediatrician. Melinda met Stacey when they both pledged the same sorority. Neither of them were chosen to join, but they became best friends in the process. Melinda works part-time as a bartender at the bar that they were all hanging out at that night. I've been sitting in my car outside the bar for hours now, waiting for the right time to question Melinda. When it's nearly time for her shift to end, I decide to go inside and buy a drink. I spot her as soon as I walk in and head to the opposite end of the bar and grab a stool. A young man comes over and takes my drink order, but I'm surprised to see Melinda is the one that delivers it to me. I thank her, and she goes on about her business, taking orders and making drinks for the other patrons, but I can tell from her nervous demeanor and the way that she keeps glancing over in my direction when she thinks I'm not looking, that she senses I'm there for another reason than besides just to have a beer. Then at 2 a.m. on the dot, the moment her shift ends, she bolts from the bar. By the time I pay my tab, get up to leave, and then step outside, she's already fleeing across the road on foot, not at all caring about the traffic that is screeching, swerving, and honking all around her. Her direction after that is almost impossible to tell, and the only thought on my mind is that she must be hiding something. Why else would she run? So I cross the street at the crosswalk and jog down the crowded sidewalk, scanning side streets and alleyways for any sight of her. Then I come upon a park, and it's so dark out now that the bushes and trees look almost like silhouettes. The path is the only thing illuminated under the glow of the moonlight. I scan for any sign of movement, but there is none. Then the wind starts to die down. The leaves cease to rustle, and even the rumble of traffic goes silent. And it's in that moment of absolute stillness when I hear the crunch of dried twigs behind me. I swing around, my pistol already drawn with the safety off, pointed right at the culprit. Melinda is standing there with a petrified look on her face and tears in her eyes. "Why in the hell did you run?" I ask her, lowering my gun. Her lip quivering, she replies, "I was scared. I saw you watching me at the bar, and it really creeped me out." I thought that my surveillance techniques had been rather discreet, but apparently not. So I apologize for scaring her, introduce myself, and tell her that I'm a private investigator, then let her know that I have a few questions that I'd like to ask her about her friend Stacey. I ask her pretty much all of the same questions that I asked Marco and Allison, and then tell her that I'll contact her if I need anything else. After following Melinda for a few days, I discover that she goes to school, then to work at the bar for a few hours every night except Sunday, and in the spare time that she does have, she spends a lot of it with her twin brother. During the few days I surveil her, she meets him for lunch, they go out to the movies, and even to the library for a few hours, I'm assuming to study. I also check out all three of their phone records, but find nothing unusual there. Next, I move on to searching Stacey's apartment and questioning her neighbors, which I assume the police already did both of those things. However, after talking to one of the neighbors, I discovered that isn't the case. A woman named Marjorie Dillard, who lives in the apartment right below Stacey's, tells me that she heard a loud scream and then a car speeding away on the same night, right around the time of her disappearance. But when she climbed out of bed and went over to the window, she didn't actually see anyone or anything. When I ask her if she told the police the same thing that she told me, she informs me that they never questioned her. 2 other neighbors come forward and tell me the same thing that Miss Dillard did, but they also saw nothing, and they too say that they were never questioned by the police. Then I search Stacey's apartment. Upon entering, nothing looks out of the ordinary. Everything is neat and tidy. There are a few dishes in the kitchen sink and a laundry basket half full of dirty clothes sitting next to the washer, but other than that, everything looks normal. The only thing I find wrong with the bathroom is that there are dirty towels all over the floor, but it's nothing too unusual. They aren't covered in blood or anything suspicious like that. Then I make my way to her bedroom, which is a little messy. There are clothes all over the bed and floor, and makeup strewn all across the vanity, but the bed is made and appears that it wasn't slept in, and for the most part, it seems like Stacey probably left her room like this when she was getting ready to go out the night she disappeared. She probably had every intention on cleaning up when she returned. Then I spot several pictures taped to the mirror, and I walk over to take a closer look at them. A few of them are of her and her parents, and the others are all of her and her friends. I lock up the apartment and decide to go check out the businesses in the area next to try and see if I can get my hands on any surveillance video. But I soon find out that there are no surveillance cameras in the area that her apartment is located, just a few right around the bar which all captured images of her still alive and okay. So all I have to go off of so far are the statements of the witnesses, which makes my job a lot harder. Then I come across a nearby gas station that appears to have a surveillance camera on the front of their building aiming right at the road. I park and enter the establishment, then ask to speak to the manager. He allows me to look over the video, but tells me that I can't take it with me without a warrant. I rewind the tape to the night of Stacey's disappearance, and see that there was a dark blue sedan that went speeding past the gas station about 5 minutes after neighbors reported hearing a scream. But the video is just too grainy, and the car was driving way too fast to see the license plate or even how many assailants were inside. Not being able to do anything with that information, I move on to surveilling Stacey's parents next. I don't have any more questions for them at this time, so I decide to just follow each of them for a few days. And after following her mother, I find out that she goes for a drive every morning around 7:30 a.m. and stays gone about an hour. She drives around and then pulls over to the side of the road and starts crying her eyes out. After about 15 minutes of that, she returns home. Then she'll go about her day, either leaving again to run errands, attend appointments, etc., or doing things around the house to stay busy. After checking her phone records and finding nothing of importance, I start to think that if Stacey didn't run away, then maybe it's a stranger who kidnapped her. I had started looking into her family and friends first because, in most cases, someone close to the victim is usually the one who committed the crime, or at least had something to do with it. But I'm starting to think that maybe that's not the case here. However, I continue my investigation and move on to her father next, and I just so happen to unearth some interesting information, although I don't believe it has any connection to Stacey's disappearance. However, I do find it rather strange that now is the time he chooses to do this, especially when he's got to know that I'm probably watching. After following and surveilling him for days, I discover that he's having an affair. But I don't know how long it's been going on. It could very well have started long before he hired me. I catch him whining and dining a mystery woman on many different occasions. They spend the whole day at a hotel together, and then one night after dinner at a fancy restaurant, Mr. Fontaine walks the woman to her car, and they engage in a goodnight kiss. Now, I choose not to share this information with Mrs. Fontaine, because she's already going through enough right now. Plus, she hired me to help find her daughter, not to catch her cheating husband in the act. I drive home that night, wondering who to look into next. Stacey is an only child, so she has no brothers or sisters to look at, and she had a few other close family members, some aunts, uncles, and cousins, but none of them were even in the area when she disappeared, so I see no reason to look into any of them. And according to everyone who was close to her, she didn't have a boyfriend either. Her friend Marco is still giving me a strange vibe. There's something about him, not showing any emotion at all, that strikes me as odd. Both Melinda and Allison clearly seemed upset when I talked to them. Then, for seemingly no reason at all, Melinda comes to mind. The night I first met her, she reached out to shake my hand when I introduced myself. She had seemed kind and apologetic for running away, and she had that sort of face that immediately puts a person at ease. Her eyes, they reminded me of my late sister's, which I figured must be the reason why my mind brought me back to thinking about her. When she reached out to shake my hand, I had admired her ring. It was white gold with diamonds to match her many bangles. It seemed familiar for some reason, like a song whose lyrics you just can't remember. I shake the thought from my mind just as I swing the car into my driveway. Then I remove my sunglasses and stash them in the glove box. The next day, I give both Marco and Allison a call because I have a few more questions that I'd like to ask them. I plan on asking Melinda some more questions as well, because after sleeping on it, I recalled exactly where I recognized that ring from. But instead of calling, I decide to pay her a visit at her job again. So that night, I head back to the bar, but instead of going inside and giving her a fright like I did last time, I decide to wait until she gets off. And a little after 2 a.m., right after the bar closes down for the night, here she comes, strolling out the front entrance. I exit my vehicle and approach her. "Hi, Melinda. Do you remember me? I'm Tony Garrison, the private investigator." She nods her head. "I have a few questions that I need to ask you." "It couldn't wait until tomorrow? It's after 2 in the morning." "It's really important." "All right then, what is it?" "I was wondering where you got that ring," I ask, pointing to her right middle finger. "Oh, this old thing? It belonged to my grandmother. She gave it to me for my 16th birthday." "Well, can you tell me why Stacey is wearing it in this picture then? Did she happen to have the same one?" I question, pulling the photo out of my pocket. As she looks at it, her eyebrow twitches and she glances down at the ground, a telltale sign that she's lying. "Oh, well, we're always borrowing each other's jewelry. I must have lent it to her." I see." "All right then, sorry to bother you, but thank you for your time." "Wait, that's it? That's all you wanted to ask me?" "Yes, that's all. Have a good night," I tell her as I climb back into my car. Earlier the next morning, when I head to Starbucks to pick up my morning latte, I walk past a small bodega, and one of the newspaper articles just so happens to catch my eye. So I pay for the paper and head back to my place. Once I finish my coffee and settled into my recliner, I begin reading through the article. It talks about a dozen people who have all gone missing in the area over the past year, including Stacey. After reading the article, I pull out my laptop and type in "missing persons in Washington, D.C. area," and the entire page floods with images and descriptions of people who have been reported missing. A trend that I instantly notice is that they are mostly all women who are around the same age and also who look very similar to Stacey. They all have blonde hair and either blue or green eyes. I start to wonder if maybe the disappearances could all be connected and that these women are actually all deceased and the bodies just haven't been discovered yet. The next thought that crosses my mind is, are they victims of a serial killer? Because that would make the most sense. And if this is the case, and I'm right, why haven't the police put 2 and 2 together? Then a grotesque image of Stacey lying in a ditch dead on the side of the road somewhere comes to mind. However, that thought quickly vanishes when I remember the ring that both Melinda and Stacey had been wearing. I grab my cell phone and dial Mrs. Fontaine's number. When she picks up, I tell her, "I have a question. In the picture that you gave me of you and Stacey at the beach, she's wearing a ring." "Oh yes, I know exactly what ring you're talking about. It's white gold with diamonds. It was a one-of-a-kind gift from her father. He had it specially made for her, and she never takes it off." "So then she wouldn't have loaned it to anyone?" "Oh no, like I said, she never takes it off." "All right, thank you. That's all I needed to know." Is something wrong? Oh no, nothing to worry about. Thanks again. Well, alright then. Bye. That night, I sit in my car outside of the bar, patiently waiting for Melinda to get off of work. She's got some explaining to do about that ring and how she got her hands on it. When it's nearly time for the bar to close, a four-door navy blue Nissan Maxima drives past the bar and turns down the alleyway. Being the curious person that I am, I get out of my vehicle and start walking toward the alley to see what it's doing down there, because I know that that particular alleyway is a dead end and there's only one way in and out. Just as I'm about to round the corner, I hear one of the car doors open, so I quickly back up and just peek my head around instead. That's when I see Melinda coming out a side entrance of the building, and then she climbs into the passenger seat of the car. I go to take out my cell phone so that I can snap a few pictures of the vehicle because to me, it looks awfully familiar to the one that I saw in the surveillance footage at the gas station. But I quickly realize that I left it in my car. And then I reach down to my hip and realize that my phone isn't the only thing I forgot. My pistol is in there too. So then I make a quick mental note of the car's description. Once the driver starts the car, I race back to mine and start the engine just as they come backing out of the alley and go speeding away. I follow, making sure to stay a few cars behind them, trying to maintain a little distance so that they don't notice me. And about 15 minutes later, I lose sight of the car. But after driving down a few back streets, I spot it again sitting in the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse. By the time I park and get out of my car, Melinda and the driver are already gone. So assuming that they must be inside, I cautiously approach the door with my gun drawn, because for all I know, they could have lured me here to kill me. My footsteps echo on the concrete floor as I listen for other sounds, anything that could lead me to where they are. However, I hear nothing but silence. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I catch sight of something coming up behind me, and as I spin around with my finger on the trigger, I see a tall figure, probably about 6'3". I can't make out any facial features because of the mask they are wearing, which is a black happy face mask, but they appear to have the physique of a man and are wearing all black with their hoodie pulled up over the back of their head. I let off a shot, but it misses my target when they go running and duck behind a wooden crate, and just as I'm about to let off another, I get hit in the head from behind and collapse to the ground. The last thing I see before everything goes black is the suspect in the happy face mask towering above me, and then someone else walks over and stands right next to them, wearing a mask identical to theirs. The only difference is that this one has a sad face. That's when I realize that I've seen masks just like these ones before. They are the type of masks that theater performers wear. I think they're called something like comedy and tragedy masks. When I come to, I strain against the zip ties digging into my wrists and the thick rope tied around my ankles. My left cheek is lying firmly in the muddy dust that is coating the cold concrete floor. From a high window shines a rectangle of moonlight, sending white beams to illuminate the grime and dust that is swirling in the air. I sit up, and as soon as I do, I see Melinda sitting in a chair across from me. What in the hell is going on? When the blank look on her face changes to a menacing grin, a chill runs right through me. There is nothing more terrifying than a person with emotions that don't match the situation. Children can be this way as they grow up, but in an adult, it's just plain creepy. Then the person wearing the happy face mask steps out of the shadows, approaches her, and then hands her something. As she stands, I get a better look at what she's now holding and realize that it's the sad face mask. As she pulls it down over her face and I catch a glimpse of the white gold ring with diamonds that she's wearing on her right middle finger, that's when I stare her right in the eye and ask, "Why? Why did you do it?" She walks over to a pile of ashes sitting in the corner, grabs a handful and replies, "I'm so sorry, Stacey. I wish I'd never killed you." Oops, wait a minute, that's not Stacey. Then she drops the ashes, walks over to another pile right next to the one she was just standing in front of, and grabs another handful as she apologizes once again. "I'm so sorry." Oops, that's not her either. I guess I can't tell the difference, but she's mixed in here with everybody else. And soon we'll burn you to ash just like all of the others. The police will never find your body. You still didn't answer my question. Why did you kill her? I thought she was your friend. My brother and I, we've always been like this. You know, different. Since we were kids, we always had murder on our minds. It satisfied us to no end to see other people hurting. To satisfy our hunger, at first we just started off killing animals. You know, little stuff like birds, rabbits, and mice. But that wasn't enough. So then we moved on to people. That's when our twin brother Max continues. And we enjoyed it so much. The thrill of capturing, then torturing and killing was better than I could ever imagine. Don't you agree, sis? Melinda nods her head. At first, we started off killing random people that we didn't even know, but the urge that Max had to kill Stacey just got the best of him. Ever since I became friends with her, he just couldn't stand it because she already fit the profile for the type of victims we typically go after and kill. Shit, if it wasn't for his dumbass giving in to his urges, you wouldn't even be sitting here looking at me right now. Because, as I'm sure you know, when there's no body, there's no evidence of a crime, she brags as she lets the ashes fall from her hand like the sand in an hourglass. We could have gotten away with so many more murders, but he just had to give in. And even though the cops are clueless, I guess you're a little bit smarter than them because you caught on to us. And who would have thought that it's all because of this stupid little ring, she says, taking it off and throwing it into the ashes. It's not my fault, Melinda. I told you I couldn't help myself. I've been wanting to kill her for years. Just her innocent persona. She acts like she's perfect and better than everyone else. Stop lying to yourself, Max. You were jealous. Oh, please, jealous of what? Our friendship. After a moment, he replies, All right, so what? If you hadn't been spending so much time with her in the first place, then she would still be alive. Don't you dare try to put this on me. Well, as soon as you started pushing me away and stopped fulfilling the cravings that I had, you should have known that there were going to be consequences. Whatever, just stop talking. I'm not doing this right now, she says, before pulling a can of gasoline out from behind the chair she was sitting in. Then she asks her brother for the lighter. He hands it to her, and as she pushes the button and ignites the flame, all I can think is that my theory was only partly correct. I was right about the murders being committed by a serial killer, but not by just one single person. A brother-sister duo, Melinda and her twin brother Max, the happy and sad-faced killers. And now that they've got me out of the picture, Stacey's family will never know what really happened to her, and I don't know if anyone is going to be able to stop them. Don't forget to subscribe for new stories weekly. See you next time on
Nina's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.